So yeah, I had I was out of town yesterday, so I hope you all made good use of the time and reviewed the videos. I saw that some of you have posted the solutions to the assessment too, which is very good. I request that everyone go over the solutions and add your arguments for all the solutions, or even use solutions as a pointer to what is the right answer. I'll be again validating all these answers, and I'll be providing some feedback as well. Okay. So what we will do today is, since we have we'll do a slightly new topic and continue with the exceptions at the end of this. So what we will do at the beginning is look at files. Okay. So files are a very important component of programming. And we write some scripts, we write some programs, but these programs need to interface with files.
Sir, sorry to interrupt. Your voice is breaking, sir.
One second. Is it clear now?
No, sir. Still, it is breaking. And
Is it
also,
any better?
no, sir. And also, screen is stuck. The screen sharing is stuck.
It is stuck, is it? So, no, it is. I'm just sharing the initial screen only. I'm not sharing the idle title. Is it still looking like it's stuck?
Yes, sir. Now it is fine, sir.
Okay. 1 second. Now it is fine. Okay. Thank you. So files are a very key, useful, facility for us. Now, why is that? Because sometimes when you want to give the input to a program, the input is not always a single line input. It's not always a string. It may be a lot of data that we are trying to provide to the program. Especially in data science, we have the input in the form of comma separated files or in the form of an Excel file. Okay. So sometimes we may have a lot of data. When you have a big volume of data, okay, then that becomes like big data. That is what is known as big data. But even otherwise, even for very small tasks, we still have a file of data. And this entire input can't be given at the input line. And so what we need is some way to feed this entire input into the program, and files are the way to do it. Also, secondly, we want to capture the output of the program permanently. The program usually prints the output on the screen. So in order to capture the output permanently, we must direct the output to a file. And then the file will be written on a hard disk, and then we can later access the file, and we can go over the analysis anytime we want, and we have permanent record of the results of the work. So knowing both how to read files and write files is very, very important. Okay, and for any programming language, and we should, that is one of the core essentials of the programming language. So today, what we will do in class is look at the ways by which we can use files in Python. Okay. So in Python, everything is the object. We saw that a function even is the object, even a function is the object. Okay. So a object-oriented programming language, and almost everything in Python is the object. And files are no exception. Files are as objects in Python. Now, why am I saying that files are treated as objects? Because files also. So is it again breaking? Slightly different room. So that may be the reason. Let me just do more change and see if it works. I hope this is better. There's not much other change we can do at the moment, but tomorrow I will change the venue of the class to the usual venue and a slightly different venue. But all right, so I'm saying that we were discussing that files are treated as objects in Python. Is it clear? Is it audible to everyone?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Shortly, we'll move to the script and hands-on session. But right now, let's hope this doesn't break too often. So what we mean by objects is that even files have their methods. So file is treated as an object, and file some dot methods. That is, you use dot, you declare some object as the file object, and then you use the dot methods to open the file, to read the file, and to do to read to the file, and to do things with the file. Okay, so there are methods associated with file objects that enable us to process the files as well as write the output onto files. All these are facilitated using methods, and these methods belong to the file object. So by now, I hope that it is clear what we mean when we say that files are treated as objects in Python. Okay, so they're declared as a class, and this class has some methods. And whenever we declare a file as an object, we can call these methods on that file object. Okay, so now with that introduction, let's go deeper into files. And I just want to give this introduction in this manner. Okay, so files in Python are also objects, so they have methods that enable us to work with file objects. Okay, so the basic syntax for working with files is the basic command is open. Okay, so open is the basic command, and it takes two arguments. One, what is the file name that you want to open, and second, what is the mode in which we want to open the file. I'll tell you more about the mode in just a second. So the open takes basically two arguments, file name and mode, and it returns the file object. Okay, it reads the file name, a string that gives the location of the file on the hard disk, the full path of the file name. And so when you say open, it traverses this file path and then opens the file in the particular mode given here. And after opening the file, it returns the handle to the file. Okay, this handle is the file object. So what is the return value from the open? It is a file object. So this opens the file and returns a file object. Okay, now the file name is a string and can be given as a user input, or you can give it within the program itself. But as a user input, you can vary the file name every time you want. So one time you want to process one sort of data, second time you want to apply the program on a different set of data, you have a new file for it. So you can just change the file name and give it as the input. So instead of giving the entire data as input every time, we just change the file names alone, and we store the data in different files and give those files as input. Okay. So what are the modes in which we can open the files? Okay. So as we already know, maybe we want to read the file for input. So reading is one sort of mode in which we want to open the file. Maybe we want to write onto the file. So that is we have some output and we want to capture the output. So that is called writing into files. And when you just say writing and the file already exists, it may overwrite the file. Okay, suppose you don't want to overwrite if the file exists. You just want to add it to the end of the file. Then you want to open the file in the append mode. Okay, so either you read the file or write the file, or you append it to the file. Okay, so append is a special case of the write mode, where if the file already exists, we don't overwrite the file, but we add to the end of the file. Okay, so these are the three basic modes in which we can open the files. Now, apart from this reading, writing, and appending, we also have types of files that we can open. Now, what are types of files that we can open? So the file can be either a text file. Okay, what are the types of files? Well, let's say file types. So the file can just be a text file. Okay, or the file can be, do you know any other file type? Anyone?
CSV files.
CSV file. CSV file is an example of a text file, because you can just open it in Notepad or any text editor and see the file. It is just a comma separated text file. It is a subclass of text file. Any other file type that is not a text file?
JPG.
Okay, JPG, those are image files. Good. Okay, anything else?
XLSX.
Excel files. Okay. All right. Now, JPG, Excel files, all these are types of what files? They are types of binary files. That is, they are not coded in text, but they are coded in binary. I mean, they are in binary format. Okay, and then we use a parser to read the Excel file and convert it into a text format, into a readable format. Similarly, we use the image parser to read a JPEG file. Okay, so they are basically called binary file formats. Okay, so either we have a text file, even a Word file, docx is basically in binary format. You can't open it in a text editor. Only those that you can open in a text editor like Notepad are called text files. They can be opened by any elementary text editor. Okay, so there's a basic distinction in file types between text files and binary files. Most of the files we usually use are binary files. But those who work in Unix would also use quite a few text files, I suppose. Okay, but at least I do when I use with Unix. All right. So we have these two file types. So we can also mention the file type along with reading and writing. Suppose you want to read a text file, we say read and say it is a text file. Then we alert the interpreter that the file you are trying to read is a text file. Alternatively, you can also say you're trying to read a binary file. So are you trying to read a text file or a binary file? Okay. Now, when you're trying to write, again, it can be either a text file or a binary file. Okay. So again, you can give that here. And when you're again appending, you can either append to a text file or a binary file. So these are all the options. Okay. So do you want to read, write, or append? And secondly, is the file you're trying to work with, is it a text file or a binary file? So how do we specify all these options in the mode? So all these options that we have listed here should be mentioned, should be specified as the mode. So how do we specify that? Suppose you want to read a text file, then the mode is given as RT. What does RT stand for? Read and text. Okay. Now suppose you want to read a binary file, then you say RB. You say the mode is RB. Now similarly, if you want to write a text file, you say the mode is WT. If you want to write a binary file, you say the mode is WB. Okay. And similarly, if you want to append, okay, you can just say append D and append D. All right. So usually we use only read and write. These are the two options because we are usually writing to a new file that doesn't exist. So essentially, we just have to keep in mind these four options. Okay. Now, even if we don't mention RT as text mode, it usually assumes that it is in text mode. But it is better to be on the safe side because sometimes you may want to open a binary file. In those cases, you have to be specific and mention that the file type is B for binary. All right. So these are the modes. You can either use a single letter because we have to specify whether it is write or read. Secondly, you can also mention the file type. So RT or RB or WT or WB. Okay. And these are the main sort of modes in which we can open the files. Okay. And once you say whether you're reading or writing, corresponding file handle will be returned. A file object will be returned. Okay. And if you're opening the file only for writing, then you can only use these write methods on the file. Okay. Otherwise, the other methods may throw an error. If you open the file only for reading and if you try to use some write methods, it will again throw an error because you only open the file for reading and you cannot write onto the file. Okay. All right. So now let's go on to these methods. Okay. Now so these are the methods that I've given here. So to these methods we can add, it can say RT and RB, and similarly we can also say WT for write in text mode and WB, and then we also have A. All right. Now, usually when we are working with text files, I'll mention that this sort of a detail. That is, usually the file is in ASCII format, at least like 10 years ago. But of late, we have adopted this Unicode text format. Okay, some of you may have seen this Unicode error that sometimes pops up. Okay, so that is because ASCII was the old text standard. Today we have Unicode throughout. Okay, and suppose you are writing a file and the file is saved in Unicode format, then you have to especially specify that you're reading a file, not just a text file, but you're reading a text file in Unicode format. So in order to do that, we use this particular mode combination, R and capital U. So this capital U stands for Unicode text. If we just say T, it means only ASCII text. It's always safe to say RU because RU covers ASCII as well. ASCII is a subset of Unicode. Unicode is the latest, so it includes the previous ones as well. It is backward compatible, isn't it, usually? So you just say R capital U. All right. Now with that out of the way, let's say that we have a file handle, and what are the methods we can use on the file handle? I'll just go over this and then we'll see a demo of this. Okay, there are three methods we can use for reading files. One is called read method, second is read line, and third is read lines off. Okay, The first two methods take an optional argument. Okay, so if you say read without any argument, then the entire file is read into a string. Whatever text is there, the whole thing is read into the string. If you specify the argument n, so this n within brackets, it's not a list argument. It just says this square brackets indicates it is optional. If you don't give this n argument, it reads the entire file into a text. Okay, that text variable that you assign on the left hand side. To specify the n, it reads only the n characters, first 10 characters of the file into the variable that we have mentioned. The next time again you use read, it picks up from this nth character and reads again to the whatever number of characters we have specified here. Similarly, we have read line method. This read line basically reads one line. Okay, reads one line from the file. If you don't specify any argument, read line of will read one line. How do we define a line? That is what is until the new line character. What is the new line character? It is \n. Okay, so a line extends until the new line character, which is \n. So read line will read until the first new line character. If you give the argument n, then it reads until the first n characters. Or if the new line comes earlier, it reads until the new line. So that is the difference between read and read line. Read, if you say read of n, it always reads the n characters. If you say read line of n, it reads the n characters. But if the new line character comes earlier than the first 10 characters, it reads only till the new line character. So that is the fine distinction between read and read line. Okay. Okay. So they have these optional arguments. Now there is a third method, read lines. So what this does, as the name implies, it returns a list of all the lines in the file. Read line returns only one line, but read lines of returns all the lines in a list. So you can iterate over this list and process each of these lines separately. So read lines of will return a list of all the lines in the file, and each line is a list element in the order of the file, and you can process each line separately. So for example, we can use it in a for loop, and we can say for line in some file object dot read lines of, and then this line you print the line, or you count the number of characters in the line. Something you want to do with the line inside the loop you can do, and this process will be repeated for every line that is there in the file. So read lines of basically returns the iterator, okay, for all the lines in the file. Iterator for the lines in the file, one by one each line will be returned. Okay, so that is the read lines, which is also something very useful that we'll find in data processing. When we have let's say we have a comma separated file, that means every line is one row in the file. Every row is a line in the file, and we need to process every row separately. So therefore, we need to read the file line by line. So therefore, we can say that CSV file object dot read lines of, then basically every row in the file is returned one by one, and we can apply some processing on every row. And then at the end of it, the entire file will be processed. Okay. All right. So that is about reading files. Now I have done some processing, and I have some output, and I want to capture this output, and I want to write the. Anyone wants to say something?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, whether we can say the read returns the list of returns containing characters.
Yeah. Okay, that's a good question. So what is the object returned by read? We saw that read lines returns a list of all the lines. So, but what is the object returned by read? Is that your question?
Yes, sir. It is whether it is a character.
Yeah. So that's a good question. So read will return a string. It will return a string of the first 10 characters. Okay, so the string is the file type, the object type that is returned. Read lines will return a list of strings. Each string is one line in the file. Okay, again, the file is read as strings. Just like the input is read in strings, the file is also read in strings, but it returns a list of all the lines. Each line is a string, and we have a list of all the strings when we use read lines. When you just use read or read line, it returns only a string, okay, of the end characters, okay, or till the new line character is reached.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Now we have done some processing, and now we need to maybe we have pre-processed the data, and now the data is in a different. The data set has changed a bit. The data set has been transformed, and we need to save this transformed form data set for future use. For let's say I want to build a model later, I want to do more analysis later, then I want to have all this analysis I've done so far available to me, and later I want to come back to it. So we want to save the output. We want to write some file. We want to write some information we have into a permanent place. So we want to write into a file. Okay. So what are the methods that Python offers us for capturing the output of our analysis? Okay. So first we have to open a file name. That is the output file name, whatever we want to give it, open that file name in the output in the write mode, either as WT or WP. Usually when we are working with CSV files, we only want to write some text files, so it will be as WT. Okay. So we just say WT, mode will be WT, and we have to give the mode as a string. By string, what do I mean? You have to enclose the RT or WT within quotes, a single quote like this. So once we have a file handle in the write mode, then we have these two methods available to us for writing onto the files. What are these two methods? Okay, as you guessed, we have for read, we have a write method and we have write lines method. So what is the difference between the two? If you have understood the read methods very well, write methods will pose no problem. They are very similar. So write method, okay, some file object but write of S. Basically, S is a string. It writes the string into the file. As simple as that. We need to write some string, something we have to write. So that string has to be supplied as an argument. And the write is a method. So already it is associated with the file object. So you're writing the string into the file object. So we just say file object dot write of S, it writes the string to the file. Now, second method we have, it's not just a string, but I have a lot of output to write. And this output is like line by line. Let's say the same CSV file. You have processed every row, and each row you have stored as a string in a file, in a list. So therefore, this list contains all the rows. Every row is an element in the list. Okay, and the rows are stored as strings. So it's a list of strings. So now you want to write some list object into the file. Okay, so basically for that we use write lines of, and the argument is L, where L is a list. Okay, and this the list contains strings as the elements, and each string will be written as a separate line in the file. Okay, every string element constitutes one line in the file. So some strings may be just 10 characters, some strings may be 40 characters. If it's a comma separated file, a data file, all of the strings will be of the same length usually. Okay, so whatever it is, the strings can be of differing lengths, and still they'll all be written as separate lines in the file. Okay, so the list should be populated with the strings that we want to write. Okay, on every line of the file, and then we pass this list alone as the argument to the write lines method. Okay, and we call it with the file object, and all these lines will be written into the file. Okay, so that is about it. So these are all the methods we have. Okay, we need to open a file. Whether we want to read or write, we first need to open a file object, and this is the common command for that. Once we have the file object, these are the only 5 methods we need to know. Either we want to read the file or we want to write onto the file. Okay, and there are a few options based on how we want to read the file. Okay, if you have now become very comfortable with Python, then we know that we want the file to be a sequence. We want to iterate over the lines in the file. So I want to use the read lines method. Okay, and similarly, I will return all the output into a list of strings, and I want to write this list into the file, and therefore I call the write lines method. Or I have a string that I want to write out. I've done some processing. This is the final result. So it is just a string, and I want to store this output. So I just say write of S, that particular string. Okay, so that's it. Okay, so finally, after you're done with the file processing, whether the file was open for reading or writing, we have to close the file. That is done with the file object .close method. It doesn't take any argument. We're just closing the associated file object. That is all. All right, so that is the close method. All right, so okay, so the only thing here that we have to, when we get down to the hands-on session for this, the only thing that we need to keep in mind is that how we specify the file name. Okay, so we will have some, sort of initial, let's say, teething problems in how we specify the file name. If it's Unix, we just use the backslash right from the root and specify the full path to the file name, and that will always work. When we use Windows, there's a problem in specifying the file names. If you just say C:/, let's say user slash username, and then say desktop and some file name, it may not work, because to specify the backslash in a string, okay, the backslash has to be escaped, okay, because in a string the \n means new line, \t means tab. So the backslash is a special character, and we need to escape this special character backslash. And how do we escape the special character backslash? Anyone?
Double backslash, sir.
Excellent. Who said that?
Myself.
Yeah, I can't see your name. Oh, Ramakrishnan, excellent. All right. Yeah, we use a double backslash. You want to escape the backslash, you use a double backslash. As simple as that. And wherever you are saying like backslash, double backslash, users double backslash, username double backslash, desktop double backslash, then you specify the file name within quotes, then it will find the file name. Okay, so that is the only practicality when we get down to the hands-on session. All right, so now let's try to use all these commands. Okay, and let's do this in our idle. Okay, so I'm going to do this at the idle console. So just join me and let's do this. Okay, so this is the full set of commands that we have for working with files. There are no extra commands or anything. This is the full set of commands. Okay, so we just have to know the context in which we are working, and based on the context, we use the appropriate method. Okay, you're reading the file, which method you want to read, you want to use, you choose the method and use the corresponding method. You want to write to the file, you find out which method will be more appropriate and use that method for the current problem. All right, so now let's go on and try to work with this. So let's keep this particular, let's say file objects.py is my file that I want to read. Okay, and you see this file objects is this particular file path, and I'll specify the file path. What I will say is, let's say file handle, isn't it? So let's say file handle is equal to open, and I'm going to specify my file path. You can use your own file path and open some file. Okay. All right. Yeah, Mr. Code here. And let's open this in the read format. Okay, and I'm going to put it in Unicode just to be safe. No, it doesn't matter whether it's, so this is a text file that we have here. It's a Python script file, but not put any scripting here. I've just given some comments here, isn't it? And I still just like that, named it as a .py file, but it's not an actual py file. It's just a text file. Even script files are text files. Only the compiled script file, which becomes pyc, is an object code, or it's in binary code. All right. So I have specified the mode as well here. So let me close the brackets, and I'm going to come out here. All right, it says deprecated, but it's still not out. I think there are some refinements to Python 3.8.5. It's just a warning. It is not an exception. Okay, we know what an exception is, so this will still work. Okay, or what we can say is, we can say RT. RT will work. Okay. We need to find, however, how we can generalize the text file to Unicode, or whether RT itself now means Unicode itself. Okay, so I'll make a note of that and I'll get back to you in the next class. All right, so now we have opened the file handle. All right, so now if I say help of file handle, or let's say dir of file handle, and let's see what are the methods available to us. Okay, this has become a file object. So now if I say dir, which is usually what we do to investigate new objects, isn't it? Okay, by now I think my style should be familiar to everyone. Okay, this is what you should also do when you want to investigate a new file object. Okay, all right, so what are the methods? This is what we have already seen: read line, read lines off. Okay, and you have the seek and tell. Anyone who has done C programming language will know about seek and tell. Okay, but I'm not going to do that. Now, write and write lines is here. Okay, write and write lines. Write through is basically overwriting. Writable is a question. You have a file object, and if you say writable, it will say whether the file was opened in write mode or not. It's a Boolean. It's a method that returns the Boolean value. All right. Okay. Now there's also a mode. Let's see how some of these methods will work. So I'll say file handle dot mode. Okay. I'm sorry, it's not a method. It's just the mode in which the file handle was opened. So that is RT. So it returns the mode. Okay. Now let's say if it's writable. So it's not writable because we open in the read mode. But is it readable? It is readable. Okay. All right. Excellent. So now let's try to use some file operations. So I open the file. Okay. So let's say I want to read the file. So let's say I'll use the read method first. So let's say big string is equal to file handle dot read off. Can anyone tell me what will happen now?
Sir, big string will contain till EAF.
Big string will contain
Till end of file.
Till end of file as one string. The whole file will be converted into a string and stored in big string. Okay, the whole thing is now there in big string. Okay. Let us say print of big string. Just prints the entire file. It's just a string, and if you see type of big string, isn't it? Let's just say type of big string class str. Okay, the whole thing is in there as one string. Now let's say I want to let me just open the file again. So now the file pointer has moved to the end of the file, and we can't do much with it. So we need to open the file handle again. So let's open the file handle again. So what we will say is, let's say for line in, suppose I just say one line. Line is equal to file handle dot read line off. Can anyone tell me what will happen?
Till end of first line it will be storing, sir. As a string.
End of first line. What is the first line?
Python file handling.
Okay, first line is just the 3 quotes. Okay, so let's just confirm that it is the 3 quotes. All right. Now suppose I say line is again read line off. Now what will line be?
The next line.
The next line. Excellent. Okay, so it reads now. So now the file pointer is at the end of the line. Okay, it's in this here. So it has read the new line. So it's at the beginning of the next line. And now you say again read line off. It reads this full line again. Okay, and now again it comes to the beginning of the next line. So this is what is contained in line. So let's just confirm that the Python file handle. All right. So now, suppose now I say line is equal to file handle dot read off. Let's say some n characters. I just say 10. Okay. So now it's 10 characters. So now it comes to the next line and reads the 10 characters. So till P, I think. Files in P. So let's see what happens when I say profiles in P. All right. So now again it will be at the Y here, and it will start reading from here. Let's just say line is equal to read line off. Okay. Anyone can tell me what will happen? It will read from Y to end of line. That is what will happen. Okay. So let's just check that. The icon are also objects. Okay. So this is what is happening. Now I say for line in file handle dot read lines up. All right. Now I say print len of line. Say print length of ith line. Let's keep a pointer here. I'll initialize the pointer. Ith line, or let's say length of line plus str of I plus colon \t plus str of, what is the length of the line? Length of line. Okay, the only thing to do here is that I have to say what I is. Okay, and we just say I plus equal to 1 here, but you have not mentioned what the I is. So we'll do that shortly. So now it will say I is not defined because it's a name error. So what I'll say is I'll say I is equal to 1. And now again I go here. Okay. What has happened? So it is already read till the end of the line. Okay. Excellent. See, now the error happened only in the I, but it is already read till the end of the line and is stored in a list file type. So now there's nothing further to read. So therefore, even though there's no error here, I is already defined. There's nothing to print. So what should we do now?
Sir, I think print should be outside the for loop. So that
No, we are processing every line. That's why the read lines will return a list. We are iterating over the list. This is the classic Python construction, isn't it? For item and list, or for item and sequence. So for every line, we are printing the length of the line.
Excuse me, sir.
What should we do now?
Sir, I have a question.
Yeah.
Sir, when we say read lines, it is itself an iterator. Why do we need to iterate over using for loops?
No. Read lines is not an iterator, SASTRA Naman. Is that you?
No, sir. Shankar.
Sankar, read lines is not an iterator. Read lines is a method. The method returns the iterator.
Okay, sir.
Okay. All these are the dot methods. Either the dot signifies the attribute, which can be a data attribute, or it can be a method. Okay. So read lines is a method that returns the iterator. More specifically, it returns a list. A list is it's a sequence. So we can have a iterator to the sequence. Once you say for X in some list, this in will convert the list into a iterator. So every time you enter the loop, the next element in the list is returned. And that is assigned to the variable we are declaring here. That is line here. Okay. So instead of saying this, we can also, let's do this all. Okay, so now what I was asking is, we're not able to print anything here. So what do we do for that? I mentioned that when you say read lines here, already till the end of file is read. So therefore, there's nothing to read here. So what do? We have to read the file again. That is the solution. Let's read the file. Now, to further elaborate on Sankaran's query, what we will do is, we'll have an iterator here. What I will say is, lines is equal to file handle dot read lines of. To be very explicit. Okay. Now let's say type of lines. Let's see what is the type of lines, isn't it? Only when we do this, we really get a clear picture of what the structure of type lines is. It's a list. See, it's a list. Says it's a list. So now, the list is returned by the read lines of. This method returns the list. So now what we can say is, I'll go here and do this, and I have to say for line and what do I have to say? For line and lines. Okay. And now you see it's processing all the lines. There are 27 lines, and each line has this number of characters. Now is that so? Every line we're applying this processing. Something we are processing, isn't it? So this is usually the task we want to do. Read every line. Let's say we have a data file, CSV file. Every line is a row. Every row is a line, and there's some processing we want to do with every row, isn't it? So whatever processing you want to do, you can put it within this for loop, and keep it applied to every line. Okay. Here we're just finding the length of the line and printing it out. Now let's say at this information I don't want it here. I want to put it in a file, in output file, so that later I can refer to it. Okay. So then what I have to do, I have to first initialize the out file name. Let's say my out file name is, let's say, C:/ what did we have here? We have something here, isn't it? Let's just use this, except that I'll change the file name. So all of you know that I'm using double backslash to escape the backslash in Windows. Okay, so that is important. Let's say this is out file, and what is today's date? It is December 1. So December 1.txt. All right. This is my out file string. Let me open a file handle to this. Let's say out file. So that's the out file, but file handle 2. Let's say file handle 2. That is the out file handle is equal to open the out file, and I want to open it in write mode. Correct? Okay. And it's a text file, isn't it? Okay. Now what do I do? Let's go back to what we have here. So again, I have to open this, and again I have to read the file. Okay. Now what I say is, I go into this for loop that I want to execute. Okay. So I have read all the lines, read lines off into lines, so I can iterate over the lines. And what I will say is, some S is equal to this. And how do I write into my out file?
File handle
File handle 2 dot
write off.
Write off. Write off what?
Yes.
Very good. File handle 2 is my out file. That's the only file in write mode. So only for this file I can use the write method. Otherwise, it'll give me a file error. You can try it out. Okay. So file handle 2 dot write. We use the write method, not the write lines, because I have only a string to write, and I pass the string as the argument. Okay. Now I come here. There's some error here, so let's just go back to the error. Unmatched. Okay. Oh, okay. So it's a print statement that a function had that line extra. All right. So now, can anyone tell me what is? See, I'm not printing anything, but it has given something here. Something it is printing. Can anyone tell me what it is printing? Anyone has any idea what it might be printing here? We'll go back and check whether the file has been written. Okay, we'll go into the C:/, and this is my file. So this is my out file dot December. Oops. Not written anything. Why?
Sir, again we have, since we have processed the first, it would have reached the end of the file.
No, but it's
No, because already we have in the previous here we have already processed the for loop, so the it might have reached the end of the file.
right. It might have reached the end of file, but what we are doing here is storing the whole thing in lines, and we're only iterating over lines. See, if you are doing the read lines of right here, then we can't repeat it here because already it's at the end. The file pointer is at the end. That's fine. But the object we are using here is the list that we obtained from the file processing. So the list always remains. What I will do, okay. Now, what is this character it is saying? It says the number of characters that have been written. Okay, so obviously it is writing something to the file, and the number of characters it writes for every invocation of the write method is printed here. The first line it prints 19 characters. Second time it is invoked, it prints 20 characters. And if you go back, you see this is 19 characters where you have 2 digits in the length. It's longer than 10, isn't it? Then it becomes 20 characters. Now, when you come to line 11, it's 119. It is 21 characters. So if you see here, it will say 21 somewhere. You see here, it says 21. That is line 11. Now, only question is, in my here, it's not getting updated for some reason. Maybe it is slow, but it is writing. Okay, maybe in your machine, it will get updated. Okay, so we'll again check back in a while. Okay, so I'll update you tomorrow on what the status of the writing has been. But basically, it is writing, and only if it writes, it tells us the number of characters that have been written. All right, so I think my out file is opened in the right way. It is December, and it's file handle 2, and we are writing. All right. Now, instead of using the write, let's illustrate the use of the write lines method. Okay, so how do we use write lines? What I first need to say is, let's say some L is equal to an empty list. And I'll first say L dot append of this. Okay. Let's say L is equal to empty list. And for line and lines. See, Shankaran, was the doubt clear about the lines?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
We're not at the end of the file, isn't it? Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right. So let's just append to the list, and then we'll write lines. Okay. Now let's just say what is the list, or let's say len of list. No, well, 27. These are the number of lines, isn't it? So there are 27 lines that are here. So what we will do is we'll say file handle 2 dot write lines. Okay, so write lines of, we have to give a list object, that is L, and this is what I want to write. It's successful in writing. Okay, so write lines doesn't return the number of lines that are written or the number of characters that are written. Only the write of method will return the number of characters that are written. So now when we go back to the out file, now you see the out file is written. Okay, all right, so you see, so this is the write lines. Okay, now you see, now the out file has 2 copies of this, because the first time is when we use the write method. So the write method, you see, there is no separation between the lines, because it picks up from where the writing stopped earlier, and it keeps writing. Length of line 2 is, length of line 3 is. When we use write lines of, every element in the list is a separate line. So it prints it like we print it. Okay. So this is the write lines output. Okay. So this is what we have. All right. So you see, it's quite simple to also write into the out file. And this basically illustrates how we use both the write method and the write lines method. We just use string for write and list for write lines. Now let's close both the file handles. So we have 2 file handles. So first I say file handle dot close off. First one is closed. When I say file handle 2 dot close off, the second one is closed. So now we are done with our file session. So today we have seen an introduction to files. We saw all the methods that can be used with files and what are the modes in which we can open the files. And then we did a demo session. All of us did a hands-on session where we used each of these methods on the files and saw actually how they work at the Python console. Okay, and we were able to open our own files in many different ways, and we were also able to write some output of interest into the output files. Okay, so now we have closed the files, and we're also ready to close the session as well. Okay, so any doubts, anyone? Was that clear to everyone? Files, quite simple, isn't it? All right, so I'll post all.
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay, thank you very much.
Practice it would be easier, sir.
Sorry?
Big
Sure.
practice queries.
Yes, sir.
What is that? I can't hear you. Sorry.
If we practice, it will be more easier.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
what
sure,
you're
sure.
saying.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, all this requires a lot of practice. We've just now started with the files, and then now you have to work with your own file. You do it a few times, then you'll be comfortable with it. You'll gain the confidence for working with the files. I'll post all the materials today, and do practice when you have time. We continue tomorrow.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah.